I just sat down and tried to film a genetics video and probably got 3/4 of the way through before the camera kept repeatedly shutting off because of low memory. And it wasn't until I realized that I'm going to have to buy a separate SD card or memory card or something to successfully film it that I just got discouraged and scrapped the entire thing. So look forward to, at some point in the future, a long, in-depth video about ball python genetics and breeding. Anyway. Hello everyone, my name is Miranda, but you probably know me better by my Instagram name at Mother of Serpents. So today I have decided that I'm just going to talk to you guys about moving to feed, all about why I don't move to feed and why I suggest that people feed inside their ball python's enclosures as opposed to moving them specifically to feed. This is really just going to cover why you shouldn't move a ball python that's already in its enclosure to a different one when you are feeding it. So first, let's look at the reasons why people choose to move to feed. The first one is because they think that their ball python is going to become cage aggressive. Essentially, they believe that every time that they open their ball python's enclosures, that they go in to take their snake out, that their snake is going to automatically think that it is feeding time and they're going to try to bite their hand, or they're going to become kind of like food aggressive. And all they want to do is eat, and a lot of people don't want to be bit by their ball pythons, which I think is ridiculous because their bites don't hurt at all. But that's definitely a big reason why people argue that they move to feed, is so that their ball python doesn't associate their hand with food and doesn't try to bite them. Another big reason that people move to feed is to avoid the ingestion of substrate. So if you keep loose substrate like aspen or coconut husk or Reptichip, a lot of people will move them because they think that ingesting any of this is going to be very bad for the ball python. It could hinder them, it could harm them. This one's always been the most ridiculous one to me for reasons that I'm going to get into later. But first of all, let's debunk those first two things. So cage aggression. This has been proven to be a myth. Cage aggression is not real. Anyone who tells you it's real is lying to you. If you have a ball python that doesn't like to be picked up in their enclosure, that strikes you in their enclosure, that has nothing to do with being food aggressive or cage aggressive, you just simply have a more defensive ball python than others. If anything, moving to feed is going to increase your risk of being bit if you're constantly reaching into your ball python's enclosures and moving them when you feed. They tend to strike you when you pick them up and you go to move them, they're probably going to strike. If they tend to strike you when they're in their feeding bin, then it's likely that you're going to just get bit a second time. Like, some ball pythons are just defensive. They just don't like people. They're scared when someone reaches into their enclosure, but that has nothing to do with moving to feed. You just have a defensive ball python. If you are scared of being bit, if you are scared of being tagged by your ball python, moving to feed is a good way that this is going to happen. If you pick up your snake after it is just eaten, it is very likely that it is still in feeding mode. And what happens when a snake is in feeding mode? It's going to bite you. If your ball python's not normally cage defensive, probably one of the only reasons it would ever bite you is if your hand smells like a rat. And it shouldn't, because you should always be washing your hands before and after handling a ball python for reasons such as that. The ingesting substrate argument has been a favorite for me just because I think that it is hilarious. People, obviously, they don't really think about the animal that they have if they think that ingesting substrate is going to be a problem. Think to yourself what you're feeding ball pythons. Hopefully it's just mice or rats. Now think about it. Do you skin the mouse and the rat before you feed it to your ball python? Do you individually pick out all the bones and the fat before you feed it? No, you feed them the entire rat. These little guys, their stomach acid is strong enough to dissolve bone. Little pieces of substrate here and there are going to do nothing. They will safely dissolve it with their stomachs, they will safely digest it, they will safely pass it. The only issue, I believe, is if they swallow paper towel, that can cause a blockage. But honestly, this is a very rare occurrence, and it is still no reason to move to feed. It's a reason to use a different sort of substrate other than paper towel, if that's an issue for you. Now, some other reasons why it's a bad idea to move to feed ball pythons. In the wild, ball pythons are what is known as ambush predators. So what this means is they stay their entire lives in their safe little termite mounds, and they wait for their native prey, African soft furs, to kind of scamper on by. And as soon as they do, they shoot out and they grab them. They don't really go in search of food, they wait for food to come to them. So if they are not a species that like will actively go somewhere, they don't go to like a watering hole to hunt water buffalo or something, they only stay in their termite mounds, they wait for the prey to come to them. This is in their nature, this is how they hunt in Africa. People are always arguing about how they want their ball python to live kind of an authentic experience as they would in Africa. Or this is a really good example of why you should feed in the enclosure. You should also, if your ball python has hides, you shouldn't take the hide off to feed, just dangle the rat in front of the opening of the hide. And if your ball python is hungry, that should cause the ball python to come out and just eat straight from its hide. This is really stress-free for them, probably the most stress-free method of hunting that you could possibly give them, probably the most authentic cuisine dining experience that you could give them. When you take them out of their enclosure, you are exposing them to new stressful stimuli. If you don't know anything about eating and stressing out ball pythons, okay, this is something that really makes me mad about moving to feed ball pythons. I believe that the one thing that pet stores and everyone with terrible ball python care can kind of agree upon is that you shouldn't handle your ball python anywhere from 36 to 48 hours after they are fed. The reason for this, there's a couple of reasons. The big one is that stress causes regurgitation. In the wild, if a ball python has just eaten and they sense that there is danger nearby, what they're going to do is regurgitate their prey so that they can scoot away and avoid danger. This is extremely bad for them. Regurgitating can lead to death. It can just lead to a bunch of health problems that you just don't want to deal with. So if you're not supposed to handle your ball python 48 hours after feeding them, why would you pick them up immediately after they've eaten and place them back in their enclosure? Let's look at this from a ball python's perspective first of all. So they have just been moved to a new bin that's extremely stressful for them. So say for some reason they eat even when exposed to this new stimuli. They're little snakes. So if they see something reaching towards them and grabbing them and picking them up and then moving them and putting them in a different spot, think of this from the ball python's perspective, not yours. Obviously, this is extremely stressful for them. Why would you put them through this unnecessary stress? It's just a bad idea all the way around. I don't know how else to word this. I just don't think that people really, they kind of connect their own emotions to ball pythons. They kind of think, well, I wouldn't want to swallow substrate. I wouldn't want to do this. I would rather move to feed than eat in my enclosure and then risking my hand being eaten off. Well, you know what? Ball python bites, you're gonna do what's best for the snake. You can't just keep a pet like this and then just project your own emotions. You have to think of it from their perspective. You have to go by their specific needs. You have to go by everything for them. Man, moving to feed just kills me, and the thing is, there are still gonna be people who, after watching this video, they're still gonna move to feed. They're gonna come up with the most insane arguments, all instead of just like educating themselves and being like, honestly, I may have done a wrong practice in the past, but you know, I'm gonna stop moving to feed. And I think one of the most respectable things is admitting that you've made a mistake and then changing it for the better of your animal. Your pride should always come last with caring for any animals, but this is especially true with ball python. So why would you do anything that causes them stress if you know that you can avoid it? This isn't about your stress levels. If you're scared of being bit, maybe don't keep a fucking snake as a pet. I'm sorry, but if you're scared of being bit, anything with a mouth can and will bite, so just because you own a cat or a dog doesn't mean you're not gonna get bit any more or less if you own a snake. Honestly, being bit by a snake also hurts less. I'm very passionate about the subject of moving to feed because it's just so stupid. And I don't mean this negatively because there's a lot of incorrect information out there that people think is the right thing. But honestly, in this day and age, if you do proper research, there's no reason why you should be moving to feed. There, I said it. If you move to feed, you did not properly research your pet before getting it. Oh man, this is one of those subjects that got me heated. I apologize if this comes off as like attacking or aggressive, because honestly, I just want to educate people. I don't want them to be like intimidated or scared. If you make a mistake, own it, do whatever you can to fix it, and that's the only thing I can say on that is just better yourself for your snake's sake. I didn't introduce her, but this is Delia. She hatched from my first clutch. She is a pewter hidden gene Woma ball python. If you don't know what pewter is, it's pastel and cinnamon. She is a sweet old gal. She's doing better about not hissing and biting me. I honestly didn't get bit when I took her out today. She's also calming down a little bit. Alright, Delia says don't move to feed. If you have any suggestions or comments or arguments about moving to feed or just what you want to see in another video, please let us know. As always, please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Until next week or whenever, until next time, bye guys.